Welcome to the final panel session of this morning. This is the panel session which is looking at a topic that's been raised several times during the course of the morning, which is the challenge of having the right quantity and capability of labour in the marketplace to build the new networks. I'd like to welcome Claire Stanley to the platform. She is an INCA board member and is working pretty hard on organising a response collectively amongst the independent network operator community. Claire, welcome. Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce your panel?
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion on the issues with the training, skills and labour market within the industry. So I will invite the panellists up. First of all, we've got Philip Lawrence, who's a non-exec director at Airband. We've got Anthony Basham, who's worked as part of the SCTE and is involved in the training sector there. Emma Atkins, who's the founder of Fibre, who are a recruitment agency working in the sector. I've got Matt Smith, who's the operations manager for Fastershire, so one of the local authorities that are pushing forward with full fibre rollouts. Melanie Reid, who is the head of construction skills and safety at CTTS, which is a training provider in the industry, and also Chris Sinclair, who's the telecoms recruitment specialist from Manpower, and again working strongly in this industry. Hello, welcome everyone.
Hi.
Hi, thanks very much.
Are we all here? I think that's it. Great, can everyone hear and see everyone? That's fantastic. So good. Welcome to the session. So as it's been mentioned before today a few times, we've had there's a rising issue within this training and recruitment sector within the industry, trying to find the right people with the right skills to help roll out the connectivity to the whole of the nation, and it is definitely an issue on a lot of people's agenda at the moment. There is a finite pool of skills at the moment and people to work in the industry, and we need to work out how we can increase that pool available to everyone. So we want to focus on some of these issues here, and also see what we can do both individually and collectively as an industry to try and push through these and make sure that we all get and hit the build targets that we've been set by the government and all the individual altnet operators have been set for themselves. So just to kick off, Philip, it'd be really interesting to hear as an operator, what are the issues that you're finding at the moment? What are your key problems really?
Well, thank you. Yeah, Airband operates in the west of the country, and our growth plans really require that we need an extra 1,000 skilled people over the next 3 years, full stop. At the moment, we are continually recruiting and onboarding people. There's a very hot salary market. We're taking some skilled people from other altnets, we're losing some to other altnets, and everybody's on a bit of a merry-go-round at the moment. And I think, as Connell mentioned earlier on, there's just simply not enough people in the industry, and we just can't recruit our way out of this issue. So there's the Airband board, along with all the other altnets, have got a real strategic dilemma here, which we are looking at and trying to solve. But I guess what we need to do is what a great outcome for us is to have a local workforce. We're not looking for a workforce which has to travel 100, 200 miles every day. They live north of Bristol and travel down to Devon to work every day. We're looking for a locally trained, locally based workforce who understand the Airband way of operating things. It doesn't matter whether they work for us directly or whether they work for one of our contractors. They've got to be competent on the equipment that we're using. They've got to understand the fault rates. They've got to be able to get things right first time. They've got to understand our brand and our culture, because they are the face of Airband and they're what our customers see. And so we're looking for a step change really in the market to be able to deliver skilled employees at a really significant rate.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that's a really strong point as well about needing a local workforce. It's with all the local builds that are going on, it's really key to have people available across the country. And I think perhaps from previous discussions, what we've heard is that in certainly London, maybe some of the larger cities, it's a much easier job to recruit people. There are already existing people in there, in the workforce in there, but when you're building rurally, then there's a lot less available people to do your rollouts, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we all know that we have people that like to work underground or they like to work overground. Some people like to work in urban areas, other people like to work in rural spaces. So actually pitching it right and getting the right people who are going to remain loyal and keep your retention levels high is extremely important. We all know we can't rely on OpenReach to train everybody because they're not themselves yet at peak build. Yeah. So, you know, we've really got to take responsibility for this and solve it ourselves amongst our own community.
Definitely, yeah. Well, that's a good point. I'd like to bring in Anthony. Obviously, you do provide training as part of the SCTE. You know, what's your take on this at the moment? How are you seeing the market address some of the issues?
Well, firstly, thanks for letting me be here. I mean, this is one of the subjects very close to my heart that I've been trying to sort of push forward and trying to get things lined up. In the process for this, I also went out and asked a lot of sort of local councils, can you come with any case studies? Can you come back? Can you refer to what's going on? And the feedback has been, we're looking to promote our own workforce closer. They're tired of the merry-go-round. I can understand them. It's the same problem everywhere else. You're getting contractors coming in, national contractors, and they're being taken to somewhere else the next day. So they're there for a couple of hours, then they move on. It doesn't help, it doesn't aid. And all we're getting is more disappointments and local people just looking out of the window. Oh, they're here today. It's a comment my dad has given me. Oh, there's someone outside digging in the hole today. 2 days later, still nothing. And it's sort of approach that's also going around the whole nation at the moment. So we're trying to promote local training to local people. That's getting difficult. How do you promote locally? You go around and you see people wanting to go where the money is. And that's the merry-go-round they're also jumping on. So we need to try and stop this merry-go-round somehow. Promoting people to work closer to home. It must be a lot better to be able to get up in the morning, go to work locally. So needs the local training centres, which is also where sort of the feedback is coming. How do you get local? One of the big problems I'm seeing at the moment is the contractors are saying, no problem, get the bid in, get the work in, then they don't have the workforce to cover it. Then they're coming with the delay. Oh, we've had this, we've had that, we've had Corona, we've had this. Yeah, maybe you could have been up front and said, hey, I've got finite resources, you're in number 7 in the plan, can't really do a lot about it. But they're getting the business as well. They want the business in-house, so of course they're going for that. The only way we can sort of get this moving is to get some kind of workforce trained, promoted, moved up somehow. So all the way through, we're still missing people. I've been lucky to talk to Dorset Council's digital place team, and they are in the same position. We need people, and they're going through exactly the same things as everybody's mentioning. They want a local workforce to move this up quicker. So that's why we're also trying to promote local workforces, trying to help people, trying to find people to even move them on. And it's difficult, as we all know at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great. Matt, I was going to ask you, as a local authority, how are you seeing this issue impacts building your area? And is there a role that the local authorities have, do you think, to help promote recruitment in this sector?
Yes, so certainly. So I'm probably the token public sector guy at the whole conference, given what was said this morning. And for us, so I represent Herefordshire and Gloucestershire councils. Herefordshire in particular is an extreme rural location, have particular issues in terms of recruiting, not necessarily recruiting, but actually having teams that are local to the area. So we suffer really in terms of the capacity of our suppliers delivering locally, but also the quality. So you do find that there's a really variable quality of build that goes on, whichever supplier you're talking about and whichever part of the county. And it's quite worrying then, as Philip said, that then some of those skills then just get poached. So you might have gangs that are particularly poor and causes particular problems as a local authority, and they got rid of by one contractor, and they only to find them 2 weeks later they pop up somewhere else with one of their other suppliers, which is a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, so we have a major interest really in the supply of quality employment opportunities and in employees. Obviously, as councils, we have a duty of care over our citizenry, and we're going through an extremely tough time at the minute. We've got really capable people that are getting pushed out of the job market, and are available, kind of very close to the kind of employability. So we're not necessarily only looking after those people that haven't been out of work for donkey's years and are going to be really difficult to get back in. Yeah. There are some really high quality people there now. So there's that kind of duty of care that we've got, but also because we fund, we've got contracts with 4 of the altnet suppliers plus Openreach. So we fund lots of broadband deployment across our 2 counties, making sure that they've got the workforce available to them that can deliver quality, that can deliver at pace, because all of our suppliers promise a lot but are always late to deliver, and that we don't have that continual merry-go-round, like you say, because that inefficiency costs our suppliers. That cost to the suppliers gets passed on to us as a funder for many of these networks, and then we can push our networks out less far as a result of it. But I think we do have, as the public sector, not necessarily as local authorities, but the public sector, a role that we can play in terms of the way we can pull people into the training hopper, if you like, the way we can subsidise some training, the way that we as local authorities might be able to provide space and funding for training centres and facilities. There are lots of ways that we can help, and I'm guessing our authorities, like many others, we just need a steer from the industry as what we can do to actually help make it easier.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really key. Is I think there's lots of different sectors within the industry that need to work together to try and solve this problem, and I think it's part of it may just be working out how we set that out and what input we need from other people. But this is probably a good point to bring in Melanie, CTTS. Some of the questions that are popping up in the Q&A already are about training centres and what current provision are there for engineers. How are you seeing demand raised in the marketplace, and maybe what are you as a training provider doing to help support that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're seeing a vast increase in PIA training. We are absolutely flat out with training. We're struggling to actually find space to cover the amount of training that's needed. So we're increasing our workforce all of the time. We've helped over 3,000 service leavers upskill and move into this industry, and that's been extremely positive. We've seen ex-service leavers that we trained 10 years ago now working at the likes of Openreach and still there, that have progressed nicely. So obviously this is an industry that people can go into and progress. It's kind of a forgotten industry, I think. It's not promoted well enough. Certainly within like the school leaving age. What we're currently doing at the moment is we're working with our local job centre, and we are upskilling people that have found themselves unemployed due to COVID, people with good transferable skills. We're taking them and doing a series of courses with them that will hopefully help them move into this industry. So we're now working with our customers to see if any of them are willing to take them on and give them an opportunity.
So just as a point, probably also for the audience as well, what sort of the key transferable skills that you're looking for? Is it people from utility backgrounds or management skills? What sort of are you looking for those people?
Yeah, Claire, it's a variety of skills, really. I mean, very much the last cohort that we took, there was a different range of people. So we've got people that have worked outdoors, used to working in all weathers. But really what we're looking for is people with a real can-do attitude, people that want to go out there, good problem-solving skills. But we even had a gentleman that was from a retail background, but very much really wanted to work outdoors, wanted to work with his hand, very switched on individual. He's come and really took to the training that we've delivered very well, and we have really high hopes for him. So it just goes to show that actually it's a variety of different backgrounds you can actually transfer to these skills.
Interesting, thank you. I'm just going to jump over to some of the questions that are already coming in, sort of thing. And it's mentioned here about one of the questions that BT or Openreach talking about ramping up external contractors to help with some of their fibre dig. And how do we see the competition and pricing dynamics for contracted labour? Particularly probably to Chris and Emma from a recruitment point of view. How are you seeing this impact of, and Philip's mentioned it as well, almost the poaching of people with the relevant skills across the industry? Emma, let me ask you first. What do you see here?
Just checking mic's on. It's definitely something I'm seeing quite often, is that you are just moving people around from different areas, and the demand is growing kind of daily for the numbers of roles coming in and everything across the industry. And it is needing more training or more people coming into the industry, because the contracts will keep going. We need a consistent workforce, more for places to help manage the quality as well of those digs, and how we manage those contractors and how they are vetted and everything. So I think it is definitely, it feels like robbing Peter to pay Paul sometimes with these kids, rather than adding more people into it and having that steady workforce and doing, like we've said a few times on this, that local recruitment. That's something that I've worked on quite a lot with some councils, and actually working with their employment teams as well and getting people into it that way. So as well as there being the contracted labour, we also need to think about next April, if IR35 comes in, how that will work with it as well, what the technicalities that brings to that workforce. So I think there's quite a lot coming up that needs to be considered now to see how we will do that as the demand for people go, as we're trying to hit these targets.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Chris, what's your thoughts on this issue?
Yes, totally agree what Emma's mentioned there. That is a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul with some alternatives and, ISPs themselves. So I think the option is certainly definitely getting more people into training capacities, and then finding alternative ways to, gather new workforces. It is estimated, approximately 10,000 people are needed over the next few years just to meet current demand. There is options. I am, working with different things in the background there, but it is a case pure and simple of who's going to pay someone more to come and work for them at the moment. So you've got to look at different things really in the background, how it can be tackled really. That's it really in a nutshell.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things you've been looking at quite a bit in the past or currently as well is Brexit and the implications that's going to have on the available market.
Yes, well, we all know Brexit is going to go ahead. Early indications coming from what I understand, I'm not the expert on this, but I can send information, is that from the end of January, there's a transition period still, but we could lose a lot of, good workers that are deemed non-skilled, because certainly their tickets, might not meet a visa requirement if they haven't met, 5-year residency. I know for a certain fact now that there is an application open now where the government will check their tax history. I think it's a case of not to see how much they've paid, just how long they've been a resident for. And then there's a lot of information that goes in the background to, deem if they are suitable to remain in the UK. There's a whole new thing that comes into force for non-EU people, which, requires sponsorship, which again could cost an alternative or ISP, £30,000 over a few years just to remain in the UK. So there's a lot that's coming up, and happy to share information on that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just picking up on another question that's coming here. So it's how can we leverage the local authority drive towards social value and local employment, which is something often seen in public sector tenders. Would there be a case, do we think, that maybe existing training providers could work with further education colleges to try and increase the number of school leavers coming into this marketplace? Is that something that we think could work? Matt?
So just to jump in on that, so I would love to see that happen, and clearly, yeah, social value is social value has been around as a concept for quite a while, but certainly in our authority, it's something that we're really ramping up now. So it's essentially how the public sector can squeeze kind of added value out of our contracts. So in the case of broadband contracts and investments that we make in this sector, it would be a case of suppliers not only saying, well, this is how many properties I could deliver for you for this amount of funding, but also in delivering that contract, these are how many looked after children that are coming out of the care system will take onto an apprenticeship scheme. Or this is how many local people, within your county boundary will be employing to deliver this contract. So there'll be a much heavier focus on that. So it's really going to be in the supply side's interest to be seen to be doing a lot more of that. So I think there'll be a push from us to get suppliers to do that. I still think there's a gap in that. We've got a willing workforce presumably out there because of the conditions that we've got at the moment. How do we convert that willing workforce through adequate training to an employable position? And it's kind of how do the public sector and the private sector come together to join those two things up, because it seems like there is ample opportunity and there's ample demand to be involved, but something's missing, which means that the current workforce just are on this merry-go-round. So what can we do? Is it a case of do we try and do more initiatives like Melanie mentioned in terms of working with the local job centres? Is it a case of making sure that we've got enough trainers and facilities, physical facilities, are out distributed evenly across the UK to make sure that there are local opportunities? Or is it literally just a case of us trying to get people as they're coming out of the workforce and saying, hey, why don't you do some research about this field, because we know there's lots of opportunities?
I think that's if I can
sorry, I think
put
as well
a thought in here, Matt, I think that's an excellent idea, because Matt, you've mentioned facilities, and for me that's the core constraint. It's not having people available without work. The best model I've seen is in the West Midlands, where the West Midlands Authority pay for people without work to go through a 4-week training course with an approved provider, and they are guaranteed a job interview at the end of it. That's a fantastic model. They're not guaranteed a job, but they're guaranteed a job interview. That training then is paid for by government effectively, and us as an altnet can go and kind of tap into that, get that saving, and get a willing workforce, a local workforce as well. I think the real crux of the matter is there just aren't enough training facilities. So Openreach have done an excellent job in setting out what is needed to work on their network with PIA, with training modules, with governance, and they've got everything structured from lead assessors to actually validating and training sites and approving them. But it costs a lot of money to get a site up and running. So CTTS's site in Lincoln is excellent, but there's only one of them, and it's nowhere near the west. It's certainly not south of Bristol. That's what Airbands need, is more local facilities with approved accreditation in order to get PIA trained people out the other side.
And again, so just talking from a council perspective, and I know I'm not alone in this, what councils do have is the ability to provide capital funding, and we have land. So, for if somebody with the correct skills and experience, and organisation with the correct skills and experience came to us as a council and said, look, we want to establish something here, but we need a location to do it, and we need some investment to create the facility. I'm sure we would jump at the chance, but nobody's knocking on the door. We're trying to knock on the door the other way. So again, and the other thing for us is as well, we do see that each of our suppliers are doing piecemeal bits on their own. So, some of them are ramping up their direct workforce and doing some of their own training. So that kind of is happening, but like I say, it's piecemeal. And I think if the public sector are to be involved, like the West Midlands model, we'd want to be putting something in place which offered not just PIA training, but lots of different types of training, which was relevant to all of our suppliers and all their methodologies, and to do it in a way that all of our suppliers were collaborating, so that local people that we brought through that centre had opportunities not just with the likes of Airband or OpenReach or anybody that's working within our locality. So it's kind of the collaboration that we'd need from the industry to make that happen as well.
I was just going to go on, sorry, Claire, do you want to?
Go for it. Go.
I was just going to mention which Melanie picked up as well there with regards to, the ex-forces. I'm not quite sure, but I don't know that many people know that the Manpower group, they are the Career Transition Partnership with CTP as part of us. So currently at the minute, we have around about 15,000 ex-service personnel yearly, what they're trying to place. And I know at the moment there's over 1,000 wanting to start a career in telecommunications. So they do have grants, facilities available. So it's something where, an alternative could actually tap into, which is pretty much skilled, ready to go from field-based telecoms in the Army, as an example, ready to start.
Yeah,
one solution.
Definitely. Emma, sorry, you were wanting to make a comment there as well.
Yeah, it was just in regards to working in partnership with the local authority. I've done previously in setting them up, and the support you get as well as from the employment that's local to the local people, to get them on, helping with the assessments, the databases and everything like that. So it's a really good way of getting in, and you're doing something good for the area. I'm very much a fan of local jobs for local people, and it's something for people to be excited about, that they're putting in this fibre that's going to be powering their house. They're going to have, that's going to have an actual impact on them and the goodness that they can see from that. It does work very well. It's just how you then look at that assessment of those people, because you're very much hiring for attitude, the can-do attitude, rather than that they've got the necessary skills in place as well. But again, it comes back to the training that's needed, and then where those facilities can be for those people to have to gain the right skills and grow in their careers.
Again, thank you for that. Again, just picking up on the questions, there's lots of mention there about further educational colleges and what can be done, obviously, because they do offer a local training facility. Is it something that we think that there's some way that we need to get the altnet operators, the telecoms training providers, further education providers, and the local authorities all together to work in some sort of cooperative way, to bring in not only the potential workforce, but also to collaborate with the space and the training provided, and maybe also some of the funding as well to set up some additional training schools? Is that something that people think is maybe a step forward?
I would definitely say it was a step forward. Looking at it right now, I mean, you go round talking to anyone that's sort of in further education, what are they looking at? They're looking at jobs that they can get to in the next maybe 4 to 5 years. Right now, we have jobs available for them here and now that actually pay them money and not a grant that they're going to have to pay back at the end of this. I think a lot of this is the perception and the way we advertise it. If we start also forcing, you have to get maybe 20 people through further education to get them onto this contract, it would also force it. This is something that's been done in other countries, where Belgium, for example, you have to have a local workforce. You have to take X from this school. You have to take them on this. But that's also forcing the other way around. It's one of the conditions of the contract. So it has to be a tie-in with all parties. Otherwise, we're just going to lose it. Why should I do that? I can just carry on doing it somewhere else. Not attractive in that area. So it's a payoff somewhere. But I mean, local workforce must be one of the things we're looking at and getting them into that training.
Yeah. I think further education has a role, but there's a theory and there's a practical training needed, and there's also on the job. So City and Guilds have got some great courses which are a good foundation stone for someone in further education to get under their belt. But I don't, and is a further education college going to invest in a multi-million-pound facility with a pole field, underground chambers, links in with the local exchange, a pressurized network, multiple sorts of suppliers kit, and classrooms? That's a very specialist investment, and that's where, you know, Melanie and CTTS, you know, one solution, one strategic option for the board is to say, Melanie, what will it take for you to open a site in Bristol, please, and tell us what you need, and we can go and talk to the local authorities and our other altnets in our area and say, let's make it happen.
Melanie, what are your thoughts on that?
It is something that we are considering at the moment. We're getting a lot of pressure from our customers to obviously open up further centres, but as you say, it does take a huge investment, and we are just a small family-run business at this stage. So it is something we're looking at, but I don't know whether we can do that in time to fix all of these problems quick enough. Yeah,
I do think that the maybe the timing issue is quite a relevant thing, in the fact that we need the workforces very quickly. You know, the slight downside obviously working with further education is that they tend to work on an academic year, so that would wait till September for taking new people in. You know, there maybe does seem to be another way to do it, but I think there is some interesting ideas about maybe forming some sort of cooperatives in local areas with local authorities and providers, maybe to see how we could move things forward. I just did that, and I'm sort of just scanning down the questions quickly. One of the things that's been asked here is also generally about experienced teams, and how we address that issue. Because I know when we've had previous conversations, people wanting experienced staff, and not only just engineers, but those further up the food chain, as it were. You know, the planners, the network designers, those kind of things. How do we address that issue? We've got very quickly, so. Chris, go on.
Come up with a decent or very good employee program for them to remain or to join. EVP is called. That's the only thing you can probably nudge someone, because everyone's going to pay the same thing for the same amount of work elsewhere. It's about what can you offer that's candidates to want to come and join you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know Philip, you've mentioned about sort of promoting a very strong Airband brand, as it were, to your employees as well. Is that the way you see moving this forward?
Yeah, so I can see a partnership with a training provider where it's an Airband badged course, whether it's a direct employee of Airband or one of our contractors that they are employed by, but they know the Airband way. They know the equipment we use. They know what common faults that we get. They know how to fix them or get it right first time, and they feel as if they're joining, you know, a growing, expanding organisation, and they buy into our culture. So that requires a true partnership.
Definitely. Okay. Right, I have seen that our timer has run up, unfortunately, on this session, and Malcolm's joined us as well. So
thank you all.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting discussion, and thank you all for your input.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you to the panel. It's really, really good session. It's a very knotty problem that we're facing here, but thankfully, I think we can all go knocking on Matt's door in Fastershire, Hereford, and Gloucestershire, and go and start building training facilities. INCA does actually have about 50 local authority members, so we should be making more use of those relationships in order to start having this conversation with other local authorities about what maybe we can do together. But it clearly needs a collective response between those organisations which already do the training and provide the skills necessary to be able to build these networks, alongside those who need the engineers. There was a question asked early on, is, you know, how many people? This is a question we've been asked a couple of times. How many people, how many FTEs are we talking about over the next 3 to 5 years? Which is quite a hard question to answer. But I think the starting point is to build fibre networks throughout the whole of the UK if we're just talking about fibre, it's about a £30 billion cost, of which something like 70 to 80% is in building the physical infrastructure. So that starts to give you some clue as to the number of people that will be required to actually build these networks over the next few years. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're about to take a break for networking and lunch, and the next session will be starting at 1:30, and it's the session. First of all, we have a session which is looking at encouraging. Oh no, we have an video interview with Calix, followed by the session encouraging consumer take-up and choice. So thank you very much. I'll hand back to Lucy, who will take us back into networking mode, I guess.